Welcome. Welcome to Allen Avenue Unitarian Universalist Church's in-person and online worship. I'm the Reverend Donna Dahlham, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I have the pleasure of serving this beloved congregation. If you are new to us, please know that we would love to know more about you. There is a QR code on the back of your order of service that you can scan that will take you to our welcome form. And if that doesn't work for you because you don't scan things with your phone, please know that it's also on our website, A2U2.org. Our mission calls us to celebrate diversity, encourage spiritual growth, and promote social responsibility while we travel and care for the earth. Each month, Allen Avenue supports a nonprofit organization whose mission and work aligns with our Unitarian Universalist principles. The Share the Plate organization for October is Maine Unitarian Universalist State Action Network, MUSON. MUSON is a state advocacy and public policy network anchored in our UU faith and animated by its principles. It links 25 UU Maine congregations and many friends in active legislative ministry. We hope you'll visit our website and learn more about our own social justice team and what's going on there. We have a few congregational announcements. Because of the rain, our community yard sale was postponed to the rain date, which is next Saturday, the 23rd. So we hope you'll join us for that, as well as the 4 p.m. all-age dance party, which, weather permitting, will happen outside. If it does rain, we'll just wait till spring. We're so glad you've joined us today. And now we will center our hearts and minds with the ringing of the bell. Our call to worship words are those of Mark Morrison Reed. The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particularities of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed. Let us share this time together. chalice lighting words are those of the Reverend Rebecca Savage. We light our flaming chalice as a beloved people, united in love and thirsting for restorative justice. May it melt away the tethers that uphold whiteness in our midst. May it spark in us a spirit of humility. May it ignite in us radical love that transforms our energy into purposeful action. This, a chalice of audacious hope. This chalice shines the light on our shared past, signaling our intention to listen deeply, reflect wisely, and move boldly toward our highest ideals. And now, here's the part that we're going to share all together. Get your puppets ready. Oh yes, and if you don't have one, take time to go and get one if you want one. So there is a line for all of you, and then there'll be a part at the end for all of you as well. So this repetitive line, though, is written in your order of service, and it goes like this. Our differences make us cool. So let's see if I can hear you do your part on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Our differences make us cool.
Ooh, that was very good. I think you have it down. So once upon a time, there were a group of puppets, and they didn't know each other. We're pretending, because you might have guessed they all live here at the church with me in the office. So we're only pretending that they don't know each other. There was this adventure that happened. The elephant named Donna made its way across 3,000 miles of extraordinary heat from Texas to get to Maine. She wandered and wandered and wandered, and she heard about this place where something really magnificent was happening. She heard there was this place being developed that was cross-generational and more diverse. Whoa, that was something she wanted to be a part of. So she got there and she started looking around, and she noticed this amazing tree. And one of the people who helped plant that tree was at the 9 o'clock service. So she got to meet him there too. And it was exciting. Wow, it had grown a lot since it was first planted. And Donna wandered around and she, wow, what is all that technology? That's amazing. I wonder if the camera turns around so the people at home might be able to see what's happening. Whoa, they can see what's happening. This is so exciting, but it got kind of lonely for Donna. And then finally, something else made its way through the water, swimming and diving. But Donna had no, oh my gosh, it doesn't have fur like me. What are you? Kind of scared. And it squeaks. Oh my gosh. Well, the dolphin introduced himself. His name was John. And Donna was still kind of mystified, but John was a very wise dolphin. So John had some lessons to teach Donna. Come on over here by the water's edge, Donna. I'm going to talk to you about all the cool things we could do together. I can swim very far, and you can sniff up things with your long nose. That's very interesting. And together we can work on some projects, because I heard there's this place that's trying to get more diverse and cross-generational. And she finally figured out the lesson, with John anyway. Our differences make us cool. Well, they learned that lesson together, and you think it would have stuck, but it didn't. And eventually Russ came. Russ was joining up, and then some other frogs showed up. There were big frogs and little frogs, and there were sheep, and there were groundhogs and dancing rabbits. And they all came up, and Donna was a little freaked out. Oh my goodness, what's going on? And eventually, one by one, they taught. Differences make us cool. And it was such a good lesson. It was a wonderful lesson. And they indeed were more diverse and cross-generational. There were all ages in these puppets. Even though some of them looked a certain age, they were younger on the inside. And then they began to make a racket. All the animal sounds started happening, and they were using their imaginations. It was such a zoo. And they were finally all yelling that lesson. Our differences make us cool. Thank you so much for participating. And in so many ways, we live this out in our faith. Sometimes we start figuring that it's just important to look for the ways that we're the same until we find out it's actually pretty darned exciting to find out how we're different and all the skills we bring together. And that is the end of this story for all ages. I invite you to take a deep breath into this time of prayer or meditation, as is your own practice, with these words of the Reverend Gretchen Haley. For this one moment, know only that you are loved, that you are safe and whole and loved. Know that you belong here among us, here upon this earth. In your body, however tired or broken your heart may be. Whatever fear, disappointment, anger you carry, for this time, know that you are not alone. Feel the presence of others surrounding you, breathing beside you and with you. Discovering together the way our voices rise and fall in harmony and hope. Claim here a resilient freedom. The choice for love, for light, to live with joy and gratitude and praise as a form of resistance. And with our breath, maybe find that space together, this sacred belonging, as we enter a few moments of reflection. May the space we create together hold all that we bring together. reading this morning are the words of Laura Hershey titled Telling. Laura Hershey was nationally recognized for her activism and advocacy on a wide range of disability rights and social justice issues. Hershey led and participated in campaigns to challenge the negative images of the Jerry Lewis telethons, to increase visibility of LGBTQ people with disabilities. Laura lived with spinal muscular atrophy and died at the age of 48 in 2010. I invite you to hear these words. What you risk telling your story, you will bore them. Your voice will break, your ink will spill and stain your coat. No one will understand. Their eyes become fences. You will park yourself forever on the outside. Your differences, once and all revealed, dangerous. The names you give yourself will become epithets. Your happiness will be called bravery, denial. Your sadness will justify their pity. Your fear will magnify their fears. Everything you say will prove something about their God or their economic system. Your feelings that change day to day, kaleidoscopic, will freeze in place, brand you forever, justify anything they decide to do with you. Those people with power can afford to tell their story or not. Those without power risk everything to tell their story and must. Someone somewhere will hear your story and decide to fight, to live and refuse compromise. Someone else will tell their own story, risking everything. In this beloved community that is filled with so many stories, spaces are created for children to explore Unitarian Universalism, for adults to challenge themselves in how we'll choose to live our faith, social justice teams gathering to support us in our work, and this lovely choir that lifts our spirits despite a year of singing at home alone. When the chance came again to come together, they showed up. In this amazing place, it takes all of us to keep things going. Your time, your talent, and your financial support. Our morning offering will be gratefully received. In great joy and exuberance, I invite you to join me in the unison response. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. Thank you, Sam and Dale. It was around 1997, 6 years into my discovery of Unitarian Universalism, when I was invited to participate in a program called The Journey Toward Wholeness and the Welcoming Congregation Process. The Journey Toward Wholeness was then a weekend workshop and a special Sunday service. It was designed to help UU friends and members who were of European American white-skinned representation to understand the dynamic of white privilege in the US and in our organizational functioning. It was designed to broaden our understanding of racism and some of the system dynamics that hold racism in place. A report developed over 5 years by the UUA Racial and Cultural Diversity Task Force entitled The Journey Toward Wholeness, The Next Steps. And this led to an almost unanimous vote by 3,000 General Assembly delegates in Phoenix, Arizona in June 1997 to a resolution toward an anti-racist Unitarian Universalist Association to carry forward the vision outlined in the report. The Welcoming Congregation program was born out of the 1987 Common Vision Planning Committee of the UUA, which established a diverse group of clergy and laity from around North America, tasked with the collecting of information about how welcomed and accepted gay, lesbian, and bisexual persons felt in their UU congregations. And they found that although the Unitarian Universalist Association had been on record since 1970 as supporting the rights and worth of lesbian, gay, and bisexual persons, the lived experience of these people in UU congregations spoke a difficult and painful truth. These 2 programs were offered to all congregants and we were encouraged to participate. It was a little like that interim time before I arrived and you were invited, if you were here, to participate in the Beyond Categorical Thinking workshop that your transitions committee worked really hard to sponsor. These workshops and programs are based on trust building and a willingness to risk vulnerability. I remember wondering if I would say something or ask a question that showed my growing edges. And I did. And it was okay. The space was designed for that. It was an ongoing process of wrapping my mind around my own white privilege during the Journey Toward Wholeness weekend, listening to the speaker's story about the impact of racism on their lives, and learning the impact of racism on my life and how it limited my experiences with people, limited my understanding about systems are designed and embedded in white supremacy. It's a little difficult to untangle this time of learning because opportunities to do this spiritual work weaved itself through my engagement in my local congregation as a layperson, in the region as a volunteer consultant, and across the association in my work there. And mostly in my heart, my mind, and my spirit. It was just a few years later that Ferry Beach, which was then a UU retreat center, still in Saco, no longer a UU retreat center, but has some really cool UU sounding stuff, offered a week-long intensive program, Building the World We Dream About, developed and facilitated by the Reverend Mark Hicks. I remember arriving interested in continuing my learning and growing. The program created space for me, as it turned out, to face and experience some of my own white fragility. It got in the way of me creating space to hear stories. It got in the way of me understanding my responsibility in dismantling systems of oppression and white supremacy. It's not an uncommon first reaction if you're white and inherently therefore benefiting from the systems of white supremacy to experience a little guilt. It's one of the reasons that the UUA has come to understand and appreciate the importance of caucus spaces for Black, Indigenous, and people of color to meet together, and for folks who identify as white to meet together. It's a way to create a spiritual space that's safe for everyone. BIPOC caucus space offers an opportunity for focused discussions supporting the spiritual needs of our BIPOC UU members and friends. Organizations like DRUM, Diverse and Revolutionary UU Multicultural Ministries, and Blue, Black Lives UU, offer gathering spaces and retreats for Black, Indigenous people of color, as well as folks who identify as white. Watch for symposiums. Watch for opportunities to gather in this personal spiritual work of transformation. These faith-based opportunities are life transforming. I've heard it said in our congregations that we don't have many people of color in our congregations, so why should we do this work? Shouldn't we just be out in the world? And we should be out in the world, working on just legislation, safe policies so our Black and brown friends and neighbors are not being killed. That is important, important work. And this is internal work that we're also called to do by our faith. And if we do this work, I wonder if we might not repel quite so many people when they arrive. This is not a one and done experience. It was not until the 1990s when transgender was even rolled into the ongoing opportunity to continue the welcoming congregation work. And still we have work to do. Some congregations intentionally develop task forces to do this work to make sure we're holding up the opportunities for ourselves to do this transformational work. Unitarian and Universalist racial diversity work in the world is noted as far back as 1784, with Benjamin Rush, a Universalist who worked with other founders developing the Pennsylvania Society for the Abolition of Slavery. We have some history to be proud of. And we have those times when our ancestors, even our contemporaries and perhaps ourselves, didn't and don't always land on the right side of history when it comes to racial justice issues. And of course, we are all multi-storied people. We find ourselves at the intersection of many identities. If I invited you this morning to answer this question, who are you? What comes to mind? And if I asked again, who are you? And you were pressed to find a different answer, how would you describe yourself? What is your race or ethnicity? What are your pastimes? What is your sexual orientation, gender identity? Who are you? As Unitarians, Universalists, we are called by our faith to widen the circle. Taken from the Trends chapter of the Commission on Institutional Changes 2020 study, Widening the Circle of Concern, which you might have heard before, and it's possible you're sitting there going, is she going to talk about that again? And let me just highlight, it was the book that our board read as a group study for last year too. And in this Trends chapter, it says, the world around us is different than it was a decade ago. or even 5 years ago. The question is, how will our living tradition keep with the times? What choices will we make or fail to make? And how will that affect the relevancy and the survival of our faith? Here are some of the realities in which our faith exists. Our nation is moving away from institutional religion. According to the Pew Research Center, fewer people are participating in religious communities. Increasingly, younger generations are the ones exiting religious institutions. While Unitarian Universalists often look at the slightly increasing number of people who identify as atheists and those who identify as not religious as an opportunity for us, some of the reasons appear to be tied to the nature of religious institutions as much as changing beliefs. Unitarian Universalism is not immune. We too are losing congregations and have many teetering on the edge of collapse. While we typically refer to our association as having 1,000 congregations, in truth, we now have 819, the report says. Except I know we have 820 because Allen Avenue has partnered with the Brackett Street Church on Peaks Island, who has just applied to be a federated church with the UUA and the United Church of Christ. So their numbers have changed, 820. The report continues, as institutional religion declines, more who enter our doors are not refugees from other faiths, but are experiencing faith communities for the first time through our faith and are seeking spiritual ground. The demographics of our nation have changed, and with them, expectations around cultural competency. Some among us believe we can continue the practices that have been most prevalent in Unitarian Universalism without change. Others feel it is critical for us to change. Many of these tend to be younger or identify as Black, Indigenous, or people of color, or hold identities that are marginalized in UU community, such as gender expansive. Some believe the work to promote equity, inclusion, and diversity is optional and tangential to our faith. Others believe it is a form of spiritual practice among us, necessary to live our faith. The Reverend Leslie Takahashi, chair of this commission report, speaks of her experience the first 2 of 3 years on the commission. She held space across the diaspora via Zoom, listening to heartbreaking stories of Black, Indigenous, and UU siblings of color as they shared their experiences within our faith. She describes how ministers and religious professionals of color had sacrificed so much to become UU leaders, realizing that the trappings of who they were like a wanted badge of honor, but not the true experience, the perspective, and the intelligence they brought. We have an opportunity to participate in this transformational work of Unitarian Universalism. This year, our very own Social Justice Committee will be offering a congregational read, which I hope you'll join us and participate in. Julica Herman de la Fluente, in her embodied learning sermon, describes her experience this way in this work. It was so powerful to be in a covenantal space where we already agree to be in right relationship with each other and to be loving with each other and to return to right relationship, and in that container to start understanding how our anti-racism work and our focus on anti-oppression and justice helps us shift our own meaning making and our own understanding of our location in this world. really deep theological questions about where do I belong? What are my values and principles? What are my responsibilities? These questions engage us in a faith context that are completely different, a complete game changer, she says. I urge you to say yes when our A2U2 Social Justice Committee invites you into participation in the congregational read and discussion. Say yes when I invite you into a study group about how we might engage the Widening the Circle Commission report. Ask yourself, what is my work to do? There is a vibrancy waiting for us as we do this work. And the Reverend Erica Barron, who worked with some of us at the Startup Leadership Retreat, if she were here, might ask, what is the risk if we do this work? What is the risk if we don't? Our closing words are those of the Reverend Sean Dennison from the book Breaking and Blessing Meditations. At this moment of ending, may there be a good word, a blessing, to help us remember that we have so often forgotten. May the message we need be gently spoken and held in the spaces in ourselves, the fibers that hold all we need to maintain our gentleness, our courage, and our hope. At this moment of ending, may the goodness we wish for ourselves and each other, this community, the ecosystem, planet, and stardust galaxy become such a part of us that we cannot tell where the blessing ends and we begin. you.